Hey Facebook, welcome back. So for today's video, we're going to be doing another doll tournament. However, if you have been here before and like you've seen my other doll tournament videos, this one is going to be a different style because it is going to be focused completely on Monster High Generation 1. So my previous series of doll tournament videos were based on theme. So for example, we did like a swim tournament and it was like, hey, which brand has done the swim theme the best? However, I just felt like I don't know. It didn't seem like y'all were necessarily having the most fun with all of those tournaments. And then there also was a lot of concern between different commenters and different voters and everything about whether certain brands were getting more biased because they're more popular or more nostalgic, whereas other brands might objectively have better designs, but they don't have that emotional tie to them. And overall, it was really fun. I did really enjoy doing those videos, but I do think that maybe conceptually they ended up being a tinge messier than had been my intention. So now we're going to try to do the same sort of concept, but we're going to try to mitigate those extra factors by just focusing in on one brand. So as I said, we are starting off today with Monster High Generation 1. And so the way that I did this, obviously I'm not going to do every single Monster High line. That would be crazy. Even just G1 had so many different lines. Doing a tournament for all of them would be overwhelming and in my opinion and with my skill set impossible. Okay, we're not doing that. So I asked you guys over on the community tab to just comment down below which one was your favorite G1 Monster High line. I did say it was totally fine to mention several, and I left that up for a few days just to give people time to comment, and then I thought, okay, cool, now I'm going to tally up how many times each line was mentioned in the comments, and then the top 8 are going to end up being the 8 lines that get to feature in the tournament proper. So that was step one, an extra step compared to the first series of tournaments. So already starting off a little bit different. So with Generation 1 of Monster High, we did have 7, the top 7, and the 8th place was a tie. So Freak the Chic got the most votes. It got 26 votes. Next up, Haunted and Sweet Screams were tied for second place by number of mentions. They each were mentioned 17 times. Then we add Dawn of the Dance being mentioned 15 times in the comments. Wave 2, also known as School's Out, was mentioned 9 times. Gloom and Bloom was mentioned 8 times. And Sweet 1600 was mentioned 7 times. So those were all very obviously going to be part of the tournament. But then we had a 4-way tie between 8th place. All of them had 6 votes or 6 mentions each. So I did end up running a poll between these to see who got to be included. So the 6 that needed a tiebreaker were or not the 6, sorry, the 4 that got 6 mentions each that needed a tiebreaker were I Heart Fashion, Wave 1, the signature original release, Haunt Couture, which was a bit of a curveball. I didn't expect people to end up bringing modern day Gen 1 style dolls into this. I was thinking G1 in their initial run, but y'all voted, so I, went ahead and put it in there anyway. And then Boo York. So I ran a poll for that little tiebreaker to see who even got to be included in the tournament. And I did leave that up for around 24 hours, as I did with all of the polls in this video. So I'm not going to say it every time, but each poll that we go through is going to be one that was up and running for 24 hours at least. Sometimes it's closer to 25 or 26, just depending on if I'm too busy to delete the poll before it hits that mark. But at the bare minimum, each one was up for 24 hours. So with this initial poll to see who got to be included in the tournament, we did have a very clear winner here with Wave 1, the signature core series. They got 44% of the vote. I Heart Fashion and Haunt Couture both were pretty close. Boo York wasn't really in the running, but yeah, it was pretty clear the Wave 1 was definitely one that people felt very strongly about, so that got to be included, which means that is our 8th contestant for this video. So now that we actually have all 8 contestants, we can take a look at them. However, before we do that, I do need to give my typical disclaimer and then also sort of an extra disclaimer on top of that. So I always say obviously the tournament results are based on your opinions. It's poll based. You guys decide all of this stuff. I'm not a part of that, but I am going to weigh in as we do the video because I feel like it would be a little bit more boring if it was just hey, here's the results and no commentary. That wouldn't make for a very fun video in my opinion. So when I do make those commentaries, It is just my opinion. You're free to disagree with that as long as you can be chill about it in the comments down below. And I really just want to emphasize that this video because not to spoil anything, but I'm going to tell you ahead of time. Some of the results I not only disagreed with, I was like quite upset by. So I'm probably going to rant and rave. I might be a little bit more like jokingly mean, I guess you might say. It is a way that I engage with things that I personally mean as like lighthearted and funny. So if I say anything that feels a little bit extreme, please understand that that is not something that is coming from a genuine place of malice. If I say like, y'all are crazy for voting this way, that doesn't mean that I like hate you as a person or anything like that. Like I'm being intentionally a little bit hyperbolic because it's fun for me. Okay. So I just need everyone to like be chill about that in the comments down below. But with those out of the way, now we can actually introduce the contestants for today's tournament. So we aren't introducing in any particular order. This is just the order that I have these images saved in. First up is Sweet 1600. I like Cupid. I think the other dolls in the line are fine. That's like the best way that I can put it. I don't actively dislike any of them, but I will say that I think as someone who does really, really like G3, Scary Sweet Birthday, Draculaura, and Frankie are just like way better to me than these Sweet 1600 versions. We didn't get a Claude, so like he kind of stands alone, and I do think this is a pretty solid Claude doll. And then the Claudine also, like, she had a Scary Sweet Birthday release technically, but it's like a playset release, and it doesn't really feel like a one-to-one comparison. This is much more similar to her Monster Ball design, and I also like that one better. So like I do think these are all good designs. I just think they're also similar to other ones that we have gotten more recently that I personally like more. So, like, obviously, no shade to anyone who likes this line. For me, it has aged to the point where it is like a little bit mediocre now. I will say that this is one of the very, very few G1 Frankies that I like actually think looks good. So there is that. Then we have Gloom and Bloom. And honestly, I was a bit surprised that this didn't get more votes. Like, obviously, it got enough votes to be in the top 8, but I feel like this is such a stunner of a line. And also, it's been a while since I've like looked, but I feel like these dolls are quite pricey on the secondhand market. So that makes me feel like they're probably more popular. I don't know. I do have the Cleo, adore her. I will say I think the Venus is a little bit iffy. She's not my favorite. The Jennifer, if she weren't so expensive to get, then I would want her. I think she's gorgeous. Jane Doolittle's kind of eh. And then Katrine Demille, also absolutely gorgeous. Also would want her if she were not so expensive. But like, yeah, her and Jennifer are like really pretty. If I had been more paying attention when I was younger and buying these dolls, I would have bought those two also. But now as an adult, like who would have to pay secondhand prices? I don't think they're quite that good, but I do think they're good. And overall, I think the line is really, really nice, really well themed, and very cohesive. Next up is Wave 1. And I mean, what can you really say about Wave 1? I, realistically speaking, like, I have two reproduction dolls from this lineup, and I'm good with that personally. But I will recognize that like this was a complete like reset in the doll world. Like this was a huge launch. And even though I am content just owning my reproductions of Draculaura and Laguna, I still also think both Cleo and Deuce look good. I'm not a Ghoulia fan, but like I don't think she's ugly in this release. I think that Claudine looks good. Like it's a solid, solid lineup, especially for a first lineup. I feel like sometimes the first can be a little bit rocky, but this was a solid start to Monster High. Straight after that, we're going to be going to Wave 2, again, also known as School's Out. I really, really do like these. I love the Claudine. She's another one where if she were cheaper secondhand, I would want her, but she's not. Y'all already know Spectre is like my favorite of all time. I adore that doll so much, so of course I love her. The Laguna's okay. The Draculaura I have from the 2-pack with Claude. I do not have the Claude. I don't particularly like that one. The Cleo, I don't know. Like she's almost there, just not quite. Abby we adore, no question, and Frankie's just kind of there. So I feel overall, I guess you would say, quite average about this line. However, the dolls that I do like, I really, really like from this lineup. So it makes me feel a little bit better about the line as a whole than like I might technically be supposed to feel. I don't know. Hopefully y'all know what I mean. Then we have Dawn of the Dance, very, very iconic. Another one that was quite early in G1's run. So, like, it's pretty impressive to me that these were such good dolls so early on. Like, they really didn't have to find their footing. They, like, were already there from the get go. I do have the Claudine. This Laguna is a grail for me. All of the others, I'm kind of like, they're fine. I also am just realizing that I did forget to put Gulia in this image. That was not intentional. Like, genuinely, pinky promise, not on purpose. I just completely forgot. I made all these images myself because it's really hard to find like composite images of all of the dolls from a line for G1 of Monster High for some reason. And I just straight up forgot. So deepest apologies to Gulia, especially because I actually really like that one. I'll pop her on screen when I'm like editing so you can at least see her. But yeah, I think this is like a really, really quite solid line. Like, I don't like every single doll, but that's definitely just a personal preference thing, not a half of these dolls are like objectively ugly sort of thing. I think this was a really good one. Then we have Sweet Screams. And if you've been here before, you have definitely heard me say that just generally speaking, I tend to not be a fan of sweets themed dolls. That doesn't mean that I hate them. They're just like not dolls that have a theme that make me want to spend my money on them, I think is like the best way to put it. However, I can objectively look at Sweet Screams and be like, this is an impeccably designed doll line. And when it comes to like, if you compare this to other Sweets themed dolls, this is like top tier. This is how you do a Sweets themed line. I did not include the Twilight here just because I feel like she was added like posthumously almost. And also because Honkator didn't get voted in, I did want to keep it to like strictly the original run of G1. So she didn't get included in the lineup. It's fine. I also don't even know that we had images of her by the time that I was making these. But yeah, that's why she's not included. Even if we did have images of her, she would not have been included. But I do think these are pretty solid, just subjectively. Again, like none of them are dolls that I feel even remotely like I would want to own. I don't care if this doll is $1. I'm not buying it because I don't personally like them. But from an objective standpoint, I can look at them and say, this is a really cool design. This is very like well themed and really well executed. So there was no surprise at all that this was like one of y'all's top favorite lines. Two more to go. This one is Haunted, which I really have grown to like. It might help that Haunted was one of the very few Monster High G1 movies that I actually enjoyed. I just feel like something about this line is really, really satisfying. Like all of the pastel colors are really, really cool. I do have Vendala and River. Would love to own Rochelle, but she is super expensive. Porter I would take, but like I would want him for like $10, you know? Like that's not gonna happen. All of the other ones though, I'm like kind of just chill with. Like I kind of just they're there. I don't think that they're necessarily bad, but I don't really feel super strongly about them, I guess you might say. But overall, again, Haunted just feels like such a cohesive, aesthetically pleasing line, I guess you would say. And then lastly, the one that got the most number of votes, Freak de Chic here. Y'all already know Freak de Chic is my personal number one line of all time when it comes to G1 Monster High. The circus theme is already one that I feel so drawn to, and it feels like they did such a good job executing this. You may have noticed I'm not discussing Claudine in this one or in Haunted. I feel like she was a lot less of a problem in Haunted, but like I'm honestly just tired of saying it and having people argue with me. If you know, you know, okay? Generally speaking, though, this lineup is so good for no reason. It's one of the very few playsets that I have in my collection. I love Freak de Chic, and that will become relevant later. But now that I have gone ahead and introduced all of the different lines that are going to be involved for you, now we can get into how I paired them up. I do think there is like technically a correct way to do this where it's like you'll take the one with the highest number of votes and there's like a specific one you should pair it with. That's not how I did it. I will explain my reasoning as we go on. So the first pairing is Haunted versus Sweet Screams. These two got paired up because they had the same number of votes. So that felt like a very fair fight. Because like, again, I think there is a proper way to organize tournaments, but I wanted to try to make it as like fair and interesting as possible. So those two got paired up just because they were a tie when it came to how many times they were mentioned originally. So like that felt like a good way to pair them up. Then we had Freak de Chic and Wave 1 of Monster High, which is the top and technically the like least most commented lines that I could have paired together. However, The reason for this is because Freak to Chic got the most votes by far, like by almost 10 votes to be included here. And while the like signature line was the lowest one to be included, I do feel like there's more nostalgia involved in Wave 1 than any other line of Monster High, just overall. Obviously, person to person, it will vary. But like, there's a lot of nostalgia around Wave 1 and also just a lot of hype because it was the first wave. So I felt like the only way for this to be fair would be for it to be Freak to Chic versus Wave 1, because any other line I felt like Wave 1, the nostalgia would just immediately like cancel out anything else. So that felt like a good way to pair them up. Then I ended up pairing Dawn of the Dance and Sweet 1600 because they're both like similar themes. Like they're both formal themes technically. I know one's a birthday and one's more of like a school dance, but they are both again formal themes. So that just felt like it was kind of a fair matchup, which left Gloom and Bloom and Wave 2, which is also known as School's Out again. I'm probably going to say that too many times. I am sorry. I'm just like trying to make sure everyone knows what we're talking about. But they also were pretty close when it came to the number of votes they got. School's Out got 9 votes to be included, and Gloom and Bloom got 8 votes to be included. So it was completely unintentional for them to end up being paired together. They were like the last one I decided on, but it works out pretty well. So with that out of the way, now we can get into the polls. So the first lines to go head to head were Haunted and Sweet Screams. Once again, I did leave all of these polls up for around 24 hours at minimum. So this poll got 764 votes, and this was a pretty solid win for Haunted, getting 61% of the vote. And like y'all already know, I agree with that. I was a little surprised. Like I know Haunted got more mentions in the comments to begin with, but I don't know. I feel like I'm just so aware of people loving Sweet Screams that I was a little bit surprised that it at least wasn't closer. Not that this is like a complete landslide, but I was a little shocked. Part of me did expect Sweet Screams to win, but like I am kind of glad that Haunted did, just because again, on a personal level, I definitely like those dolls better. Okay, here's where we're going to get a little spicy. The next set of polls was Freak to Chic versus the signature Wave 1 lineup. 795 of you guys voted, and by a solid margin, 60% of you said that Wave 1 was better than Freak to Chic. And first of all, I just think objectively that's incorrect. But like also I am biased towards Freak to Chic. So there is that. I did feel betrayed by this though, I can't lie. And also it makes me frankly just a little bit confused because Freak to Chic had the most comments, again, by a good margin. Like people really were like, Freak to Chic needs to be in this tournament. Freak to Chic is the best Monster High line. But then when it came to voting against Wave 1, suddenly y'all are like fucking crickets out here. Y'all aren't gonna give Freak to Chic the love that they deserve. I don't know. I just think this is crazy. And like, I'm not trying to be mean. Again, I know I said that in the intro, but I feel like I need to clarify. I'm not trying to be mean. I do just objectively think that Freak to Chic is better dolls. And I also think this really goes to show how heavy that nostalgia bias is. I paired it against Freak to Chic because I thought that would be the only way it was a fair fight, but I still thought Freak to Chic was going to win. Oh, not to say that I wouldn't have done this if I had known that the outcome would go this way, because I'm not trying to like rig the tournament. I'm just so surprised, and I also think this really illustrates again like with how strong the nostalgia bias to me clearly is. This is why some of the like theme based tournaments got kind of questionable, because people were like, G1 Monster High is just always going to win because it's G1 Monster High. Signature is going to like win this round because it's the signature, but like really, I think Freak to Chic was better. But unfortunately in this case, I have to go by what you guys chose. So even though I violently disagree, and I think this was a personal attack, frankly, I'm kidding. I'm being funny. Signature gets to move onward because I am beholden to the polls. So there you go. Then for the next pair up for like round 1 of the tournament, we had Gloom and Bloom versus Wave 2 / Schools Out. We got 1,000 votes for this one, so like a decent chunk more than some of the other polls that we've looked at. And this was what I would consider a very firm borderline landslide win for Wave 2. They got 73% of the vote. Honestly, this one could have gone either way for me. I think that when you look at the line as a whole, Gloom and Bloom is objectively better. Like, I just think the theming is so strong, and like you look at those dolls and they do all feel like they go together. However, Schools Out has Spectra. So like she alone could carry them for me. So yeah, either way, I would have been like, that's a completely valid response with this one, unlike with the last poll that we looked at. But you guys have decided that Schools Out is better, so on they go. And then for the final matchup of round one of the tournament, we had Dawn of the Dance versus Sweet 1600. 903 of you guys voted, and I will say at the time that this poll concluded, not to spoil anything, I thought this was going to be the closest margin that we saw, because Sweet 1600 won with 54% of the vote. It was 54 to 46. That's very close. Like, that is an extremely close poll. Also, I think that is objectively incorrect. Again, I'm sorry. I think that's crazy. I think that's genuinely like bonkers. I cannot. I mean, Cupid is there, so like maybe that was bringing Sweet 1600 up. And I will say that I think Claude and Sweet 1600 looks better than Deuce and Dawn of the Dance. But like comparing the others, I am baffled by this. But I feel slightly better about it because at least it was close. At least it was obviously a very hard fight. But again, I am at your mercy. So I had to move Sweet 1600 up, even though I personally think that's a crazy choice. That brought us to round two of the tournament. So we had Haunted going up against Wave 1, the signature release. 1,000 of you guys voted, and this was another pretty solid win for Wave 1 with 64% of the vote. And again, I just don't think I just don't. I'm sorry. I really, really think that Haunted is just better. Again, it's very cohesive as a line. I know Wave 1 was so iconic. I'm not trying to take that away from them. And honestly, I think, again, as I said before, those are good dolls. I'm not trying to say that they're not good dolls, but I also think that almost all, if not every character in Wave 1 that got another doll after that, because like I don't think that like Holt got a second doll, as far as I remember right now. But every single doll from Wave 1 that got more than one doll, I think that there are other dolls of that character that are better. So it's just kind of crazy to me that Wave 1 keeps winning, because I think Haunted is so much prettier. And the new characters for Haunted too, like, okay, I understand like the main cast is maybe not as good. Like, I'm not trying to say Haunted Draculaura is better than Core Draculaura, because like Core Draculaura is better. I'm just saying there are other Draculauras that are better than Core. But when you account for the new characters that Haunted introduced, Kiyomi Porter, Vandala, and River, I think it's wild that those did not bump this up to where it was at least even a closer race. I don't know. I told you at the beginning I had complaints about this one. I think this was a wild ride for me personally, but you said signature won, so signature goes on. Then second and last poll for round two of the tournament was Wave 2 Schools Out versus Sweet 1600. 947 of y'all voted, and with 76% Schools Out won, which I finally agree with. Like, I finally have a very firm stance there. I was getting scared with some of the other polls. I was like, damn, everyone is voting against my interest. I think I was just genuinely scarred from the moment that we had Freak to Chic versus Signature. Everything after that, I was like terrified to look at these results. But I definitely agree with this one. While I think it's crazy that Sweet 1600 got to round two, I do think it's completely fair that they got knocked out in round two, because I think objectively Wave 2 is better. There are like our new characters with Abby and Spectra, which like I think both of those are better new characters than Cupid. I'm so sorry. It's not that I don't like G1 Cupid. I just think that Spectra is better by herself, but Spectra and Abby by themselves, yes. And then there are other strong dolls from the lineup. So this one I was happy to see Schools Out gets to move forward, which means that our like final poll here, like the head to head, is interestingly enough the signature Wave 1 looks versus the Schools Out Wave 2 looks. 887 of you guys voted on this poll, and it was a dead tie, which is crazy. Again, I thought that the one of you earlier was like the tightest it was going to be. We have never had a 50-50 poll in any of the tournaments that I have run, ever. This is the first time this has ever happened. That's just crazy to me. And also, like, I don't know. I think it's so clear that school's out is an improvement that I was surprised. But again, signature has like that nostalgia factor going on. So with this, I could not leave it at a tie. I could not. Like, I just wouldn't be satisfied being like, hey, here's a tournament video. It was a tie. I couldn't do that to you guys. So I did something that I have never done before, and I took to Instagram. Now, there's not like it's not like, "Oh, I hate the people on Instagram. I'm not including them in the polls." It's just way easier to only run it on YouTube. It is my main platform, so I feel like the most people are going to see it here on YouTube, and like everything's just easier to just do it over here for me personally. So no shade to everyone on Instagram. I just have never done anything tournament wise on there because I felt like it was easier to do it here on YouTube. But with a 50-50 split, I was left with no choice. So I ran the same poll on my Instagram stories, which naturally run for one day. So that also was perfect. That like the time that I typically run them was like how long it would stay on the stories for. And I kept checking this, okay? Like I kept checking because I was like, how is this going to go? I'm so nervous, so anxious. When I tell you it was 50-50 almost the entire time, I was sweating in my metaphorical boots, being like, I'm going to have no choice but to make this video a tie. Like, I went to Instagram to be the tiebreaker, and it's not going to work. But at like the last minute, some of y'all must have swooped in and we got some extra votes, and we do have a winner. So I can't see in this screenshot. I should have checked to see how many people had voted. I didn't think about it at the time, to be perfectly frank with you guys. But I have a screenshot of the story, so you can tell that I'm not lying. So I can't tell you how many people voted, but I can tell you people did vote. Um, Within 24 hours, we had a super, super slim win, 49 to 51%, literally the slimmest it could be, and Wave 2 wins. So before I rant, moment of applause for Wave 2. Good job. They are the best G1 Monster High line of all time, according to you guys, okay? Like, I didn't do this. I didn't interfere in any way. Y'all did this. I am so fucking glad that it was Wave 2. Like, I would have still published the results if it was Wave 1. I would have ranted a lot more. I'm so happy that it was Wave 2. I disagree. I still think Freak to Chic is the best Monster High G1 line of all time. But y'all have voted and said it's Wave 2. And like, I can accept that because it's not Wave 1. Okay. I was so, again, I'm not trying to say that Wave 1 is bad. I think it is insane that Wave 1 made it to the finals, made it to the point where I needed a tiebreaker on Instagram, and we got that tie broken by 1%. I think that is insane, and I'm just really glad that nostalgia didn't carry it to the point where they got the win. I'm sorry if you love the signature line. Like, if that is your favorite line of all time, really and truly, that is wonderful. I'm not saying all of this to shit on you. I just do think there is so much of that that is about nostalgia, not looking at the designs objectively. And I also understand that, like, that can be very hard to do. It's harder for some people than others. I'm not trying to sit here and be like, I'm immune to nostalgia. That's not what I'm saying. I do think that for me, it is on the easier side of the spectrum to kind of discard the nostalgia and look at things objectively. Again, I'm not saying I'm immune. I'm just saying I think that I definitely fall a little bit less into nostalgia than some other people do. And that's also not like a moral failing on your part. If you're a super nostalgic person, like, it's fine. That's not me saying that I'm better than you. I'm probably not. But I'm just saying, like, I personally feel like I'm slightly better at looking at two things and being like, I have nostalgia for this, but this is objectively better. And some people have a harder time with that. So, like, I just feel like that was happening a lot. I feel like Wave 1 got carried so much further than maybe they objectively deserved to because of the nostalgia. And, like, I get that that's a huge factor, but it was a little bit bothersome to me because I like want to run these tournaments as what's objectively the best. And it's just kind of impossible to do that, like, with the human psyche and human condition. But it did feel like nostalgia was at play a lot more than I wanted it to be in these results, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So it was a bit of a personal relief to see that Wave 2 won. Is that me being kind of an asshole? I don't know, maybe. It is what it is. But again, I didn't do that, okay? I didn't manipulate those results. You guys voted. So if you are a wave one truther and you think that that's bullshit, you can think that. I mean, obviously it was very close, so a lot of people probably do, but I didn't do it. This is all you guys. So with that being said, those are the results. Those are my feelings on them. Once again, congratulations to Schools Out for apparently being the best Monster High G1 line of all time. I need to know what y'all's opinions are about this in the comments, both like with how the tournament went and then also with my opinions. Like I want to know your thoughts on my thoughts. It's like little like train of thoughts there. But yeah, I'm just very curious because I do feel like some of these were very tight, some of these were very controversial to me. So I'm very curious to see what y'all have to say about this. But I do hope you enjoyed this different style of tournament video. I do think it was fun, and like while obviously I just ranted about how nostalgia was still definitely at play here, I think it was better to be like, hey, here's two lines you might feel nostalgic for, which is better versus like, hey, here's a G3 line and here's a G1 line. Like I do think that doing it like all as one brand was probably a better way to do things. So let me know your feelings on that too. As the time of filming, I have already posted asking for you guys to tell me what your favorite Rainbow High lines are. By the time this goes up, that's going to be gone. I'm not saying that to be like, go post, like, go check out the community post. I'm just saying that to be like, we have a Rainbow High version of this style of poll in the works. Like we are starting to get that ball rolling. So if you like this one and like this, or like the next one, there we go. Words are hard sometimes. Then I'll continue doing this style of tournaments because I really do just feel like the tournaments are such a fun concept and I love running the polls and getting you guys like involved in it. So I'm hoping that this style of video and this style of tournaments will be something that y'all resonate more with and that y'all enjoy more, and we can keep doing it for many, many, many different doll lines. But yeah, I guess we'll find out. So let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this. I'm finally done talking. I do hope you had fun today. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day or your night or whatever it might be, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.